Al Bernstein here at the Cosmopolitan Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, where we have just seen a very strange ending to the welterweight battle between Diego Chavez of Argentina and Brandon Bam Bam Rios. Rios won by disqualification in the 9th round when Vic Draculich decided to disqualify Chavez. Now, there had been 3 point deductions during the course of this fight, 2 from Chavez and 1 from Brandon Rios. It was a fight, by the way, in which Chavez was ahead by 1 point on 2 of the scorecards, and Rios was ahead by 1 point on the other scorecard. So in a fight that Diego Chavez was at least temporarily ahead on, he was disqualified by referee Vic Draculich. It was a rough and ugly fight, and Draculich kept trying to get control of it with the levying of those point deductions, but it never quite happened. And in the 9th, the passion of the 2 fighters erupted, and there were lots of shouting between the 2, pushing, and finally Draculich decided to disqualify Diego Chavez. Well, Brandon Rios couldn't come here to the press conference because of injuries he suffered in this fight, but let's go up to the podium now and hear from some of the participants.
Brandon went by ambulance to the hospital. He got thumbed in the eye real bad, in the left eye. And but what really hurt him was when he went down and he got pulled down by he cracked his neck. And he's very concerned about it. He's got dizziness, he's got headache, he's fuzzy, and he's having trouble seeing out of his left eye. And the doctor thought, best thing, get him to the hospital. I'm not going to stand up here and say, I mean, somewhere that fight got out of control, I don't know when, but it felt like he just didn't have control of it. But it was a hard fight for him.
Cameron, I guess the question is, what should the ref have done that he didn't do? He took points, he was warning them. Like, where did he let it get out of control? What didn't he do?
That's what I mean. At some point he brought them together, and I thought that, look, I'm biased for my guy. I thought that he kept holding him, and I think Chavez is the one who initiated all the problems. So, in my opinion, I thought he should have told him, look, you're going to get disqualified, and I've taken 1 point, I've taken 2, you're out of here next time, and maybe that would have stopped it instead of just taking points. I thought he should have gave him a stern gone. But again, I'm not a referee, so I know he did the best he could. He's an excellent referee, and it just happened in the heat of the moment.
Diego, did you feel the disqualification was justified? Rio said you were poking him in the eye, and that's ultimately why that fight was disqualified. What is his thought on the ending of the fight?
Si sentís que fue justificada la descalificación porque Ríos dijo que le metiste el dedo en el ojo.
La verdad que no. Fue tiro una mano, él mete la cabeza sobre mi bajo brazo acá y quedamos trabados, pero en ningún momento traté de buscar o ensuciar la pelea. Yo quiero preguntarle a ustedes que el porqué de mi descalificación cuando HBO me tenía arriba en el puntaje.
It was a clinch, and his head was under my arm, and I wanted to be free, and I never wanted to put anything in his face or his eyes. And what I want to do is to ask you what you think about the disqualification, because HBO had
He thinks of it, not me.
No, all of you, not only you. He wanted to ask everybody what you think about the disqualification, because he knows that HBO had him in all his scorecards on the top.
When they were in the clinches, Rios was complaining that Diego was raising his head up and kind of raking him with his head.
Dice que Ríos se quejaba de que vos levantabas la cabeza en el clinch. ¿Y por qué le vas a levantar? ¿Por qué te caes la cabeza eso?
¿Qué más voy a decir? Ríos hizo lo que quiso, puedo mostrar mi ceja, mi espalda, para demostrar lo que Ríos hizo, lo que quiso.
He did what he wanted. I did with my head like this, because he's always straight with the head, like a third punch. And he did what he wanted with the head. He hit me back all the times, and like I show my back for you to see what the blows made him in his back. Mostrale. En la espalda. With all the blows in the back. Everything blows in back. Not here. Here. It's illegal. It's illegal.
When the fight was waved off, did he assume that he was just getting another point deduction, not the final disqualification?
Cuando paró la pelea ese último, ¿pensás que estaba quitando otro punto o que te habían descalificado?
No, que ya me había... no entendía el porqué de la descalificación porque enseguida hizo así, pero no entendía el porqué.
I understood that the fight was over. I didn't know why. That's what I didn't understand.
In the past, when we had a lot of controversies and fights and so forth, as you know, the commission was nowhere to be seen. Now, in this situation, we have the chairman of the commission, the executive director. I want to personally thank them because obviously only they have the official explanation of what happened regarding the disqualification and so forth. So I'd like them to come to the microphone. If you have a microphone there, good, and they'll be able to explain.
I know no fan of boxing ever wants the referee to make the determination of a fight. However, there are circumstances and points in time where the referee does have to get involved. And you may not agree with it, but you have to understand it, and I have to explain it to you. Vic, early on, tried to set a standard in that fight between these two fighters. This was not a boxing match, this was a brawl. They were there to brawl. Vic tried to get control of that fight by deducting the points. Whether or not you agree that point was appropriate, he was trying to get control. And as the fight went on, he was losing that control, and I don't think either corner had respect for the authority in that ring, and that is my concern. When he went in there to lay down the law, they were not listening, and that fight was disintegrating to a point where it could become dangerous. And it is our responsibility as the officials in that ring to take ownership of that ring. And that's what Vic did. He did comment, he did speak with the corners knew what was coming, there was notice to them, it wasn't a surprise action. However, we have the obligation again to ensure that our officials are doing the best job they can. We just left our staff meeting where we met with the judges, we met with the referees, we talked about every fight, and Vic has committed to coming in to the office, reviewing the tape with our executive director, and understanding exactly what he could have done better as an official, and how he could have had more control of that fight. But also, too, the fighters have an obligation. If the fighters aren't willing to cooperate, there has to be accountability.
Why then, and why Diego Chavez? In other words, why did you do it then, and why specifically Chavez in that moment? Did he explain why?
I think there was a question of whether or not there was an intentional foul occurring early on in the fight. That was brought up to the ref's attention. He spoke to both corners about it. And then when he saw the forearm go to the forehead, he then made that decision at that point in time.
You know, Al, in addition to your question, also it was brought to Vic's attention that Mr. Chavez allegedly was gouging at the face of Mr. Rios, at his eyes, and things of that nature. That's an egregious foul. Vic didn't see it, the corner brought it to his attention. Vic then went over to Mr. Chavez's corner and told him, hey look, I didn't see this, it was brought to my attention, you keep this type of action up, you're going to be disqualified. Then the round went ahead and kicked off, and as Chairman Aguilar stated, they got locked in close and threw an elbow through to the throat, or the forehead. You know, we don't have 16 cameras to look at it, but you know, from our vantage point, that's what Vic saw.
So the officials from the Nevada State Athletic Commission, Francisco Aguilar, the head of the commission, and the executive director, Bob Bennett, explain why they believe Vic Draculich took the measure he did to disqualify Diego Chavez. Clearly, there will be a lot of controversy attached to this fight, especially since Diego Chavez was ahead on the scorecards when this fight ended. Now, an interesting thing that happened right at the end of the press conference is promoter Bob Arum said, I'm sorry to Diego Chavez, and said, don't worry, you will be back. That was a way of obviously alleviating the disappointment that Chavez had for losing this by disqualification. Now, that was the second loss in Chavez's career. He had lost to Keith Thurman, one of the top welterweights in the world, in a stirring fight. And now this loss, but this one, of course, coming by disqualification. As for Brandon Rios, of course, he went to the hospital. As his manager Cameron Duncan pointed out, some issue with his eye, plus a neck problem, and apparently some concern on his part about his physical condition. So he did not come here to this press conference, but we'll see how that impacts Brandon Rios as we move forward. So a win for Brandon Rios, but not one that would seem satisfying to them, and probably not to boxing fans as well. I'm Al Bernstein for the Cosmopolitan here in Las Vegas.